I have to admit, when I first sat down at the table in Seeking Sustainability, I thought I had stumbled on a group of friends who had all decided to take the class together, or at least a few sets of very close friends. This wasn't the case at all. Some of you knew each other a little bit before coming, right? To the table.
No.
I knew one person at our table before class, but he sort of didn't come. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know anyone.
Yeah, I didn't really know anyone else though.
As I got to know the group, I came to realize that each of them had very different perspectives when it came to the class. There were people who could predict what Dr. Baird wanted them to get out of an assignment, and others who would come at the readings in entirely different ways. Some people would bring in really surprising connections, and others found classic and emblematic examples. Part of this happened because of the variety of majors represented at the table. Each student had different areas and levels of expertise.
Sitting at the table benefits with that as well, because we've each got different perspectives and they work together to sort of come to a consensus.
Yeah. I feel like I find myself wanting to go to class because I want to see the people at our table, because the way that the classroom is structured, also the way that our professor has structured the class to allow us to have time to talk with our tables and with our groups, I feel like I've learned a lot from the people at my table, so I want to come and hang out with them and hear what they have to say and continue to talk to them. It feels like more of a relaxed environment rather than sitting alone for 50 minutes and being responsible for your own learning all on your own.
I think having the different backgrounds at our table helps the learning because everyone has different things to contribute, which is nice. And like Glenn said, you don't have to do all the learning on your own, which is super helpful, for me at least.
It took me a while to realize that I got to know so much about each student because they had time to speak in class. How did Dr. Baird know that his students were talking about the assignments?
I don't get to listen in on every conversation, so I surrender some control over what they taught me. They could be talking about the football game. So you've got to have some trust, I think, both ways. But I feel like I need to trust the students more. When I don't bother to learn about my students, and I just tell myself stories about, oh, this person is out all the time. They're just playing video games and goofing off. It's a story. I've just told myself a story. It fits a convenient narrative about college students these days. They just show up and they just want to hang out and then they just want to get a degree. I don't know what the reality is. Generally, when I find ways to learn about students, and it can be in these informal ways where I sit in at a table and I listen to their discussion, or I have an activity that asks about them and say, I want to hear, I want to see where your clustering coefficient is. I want to hear about your conversation with your grandparent about what the American dream was like years and years ago and how that compares with your vision of the American dream. I trust them more. I feel like I know who they are a little bit better. I feel like I can be a better teacher to them. That's something we should aspire to in the classroom, is getting to know our students, is trusting our students, is being vulnerable in front of our students, modeling being vulnerable so that they're willing to do it.
Trust is such an important word here because I felt like that was built both in the group and in the class as a whole. Spending time in groups gave the students an environment to build trust with one another, so they could be more honest and open with each other. This in turn helped them learn more from one another.
And we don't need to become our students' best friends and slap high fives, but we can know a little bit about their situation. We can do this with a student information sheet at the beginning of the semester. We can do it with a little check-in mid-semester. Hey, what's working for you? What's not? We can do this by enabling that student to make connections in the class so that she feels like at her table people know her name. And we're in this routine of, what did you have for question 7? I didn't have that. Oh my God, last night was so rough. This happened. And they can laugh and they can talk. Well, actually, question 7 is this. Boom. Learning occurred. Community occurred. I wasn't privy to any of it. I didn't have control. But I think that was a win.
The process of getting to know new people and seeing their perspectives has ramifications well beyond the time spent in class, and even beyond the particular relationships that the students have with their classmates.
I found a podcast and a book. Dr. Meg Jay is a psychologist. She has a TED Talk, and I play this in class, and she's really focused on the 20s as a decade, as a period in a person's life. And she pushes back against this idea that your 20s are this kind of throwaway decade. And she says, look, your brain is going through its second and last big phase of development. And she says, whatever you practice during this time, you're going to get good at that thing.
I always think about this one TED Talk that we listened to in class that was given by a woman named Dr. J, and she talked about when you're in your 20s, your brain is changing and it's making all these new connections, and you have to allow yourself to be open to change and open to other perspectives and opinions and values, because if you're not now, then you're just going to grow up to be small-minded, and it's just going to keep getting smaller as you get older. And like, why would you want to have a small mind? Like, why wouldn't you want to be able to understand everything? So I feel like the class really challenged me to be like open to change, open to the world, open to things that I never thought I would be, especially just in education.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. And I think just like the entire approach to the class, having the table and everything like that, definitely keeps you open to other people and their ideas. So just like, I guess my biggest takeaway from the class is almost just like listening, having other people's opinions and having them be useful to my learning.
So here we are, a class of people who are connected to each other. Active learning is built into the space, the class time, the assignments, and still we have a big question. What is sustainability? How do we create a sustainable future? Next time in our active learning story.